Hello and welcome back to TUC0's Talks. If this is your first time, welcome. TUC0's Talks is a leadership podcast that asks tough questions. We're trying to learn how to fail forward and ultimately how to take care of people. Well, today we have a phenomenal leader. I am really excited about this one. He is a prior naval aviator, retired, and now the chief of staff of Hillsdale College. It is an amazing time. I know you're going to learn a ton from it, and you are not going to believe his comparison of leadership versus culture. It's amazing. I was completely blown away, and I 100% agree with. Well, buckle up because we're checking in to TUC0's Talks. TUC0's Talks. We are with another interview today, and I am very, very excited about today. It's really a true honor to have our host on here. And so before we get to Mike Harner here and for him to do introductions, let me take a second and tell you the person that we're talking to today. So I'm 15 years in. I'm a lieutenant colonel and trying to figure out what am I going to do when I grow up and retire. And I am fortunate enough to have this man a couple doors down from my family-in-law. And I sat down and said, all right, what are you doing? What did you do when you retired? And when I left there, I looked at my wife, Karen, and I said, oh my gosh, I want to do what Mike's doing. I want to be Mr. Harner. Like this is the experience that I had. So I'm hoping everybody enjoys the time. I always love embarrassing people right before I get them to speak, and well done, I'm sure. So Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris, till about 30 seconds ago. So yeah, no, doing great. And I appreciate that's very kind of you. Very kind.
Oh, well, it's always good to have people on, especially experienced people. So if you would just take a couple seconds here and tell everyone who you are, where you came from.
Sure. My name is Mike Harner. I am currently the chief of staff at Hillsdale College in Michigan. I've been doing that for about the last 18 years. I've been working at the college for about the last 20 years. Prior to that, I was a career naval officer and an aviator. I was a helicopter pilot for a period of time, and then flew transports and got to spend some time in Chris's world a little bit with better educated people than me, and we just did a career there, and then got into higher education, and with a small stop in the golf industry of all places, which wasn't too bad. But in any event, yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell regarding life and career. Married for 41 years, 3 sons, 5 grandkids. Just very blessed, very blessed.
Man, that's a career. Like that's huge. Just a full military career, a full career of just investing at a great institution like Hillsdale College, and then to have a family, 41 years married. Congrats. That is a feat. Just kids, grandkids, the whole deal. So a total success story. Well, let's dive into what got you there. So obviously you don't just show up and things happen. You have to have people investing in you and in your life. And I'm sure you've had some great leaders. Talk to me about one or multiple of your great leaders, not really their name, but what were the characteristics? What was it that you look like that you said, I want to be like that?
I've been blessed from day one. I was born into a good family. My dad I was the last of 4, and I was 10 years after my nearest sibling. So I was lovingly referred to as the third martini. Um, but in reality, what that meant was I had this family that was already in front of me, teaching me as I went. My dad was a World War II Army Air Corps guy, very ethical, honorable, strong man. My mom was very faithful, and between the two of them, they raised me and my brothers and sisters to care about certain things, to love our country, to love God, and that's a great start. I think the big benefit I got from being last was I had my dad as a role model, and he was admittedly older when I kind of became fun after when I was a teenager, but I had an older brother who very much influenced my life. And I think there was always expectation from my dad and from my brother and from my mom, for gosh sakes, that you're going to grow up and you're going to do something, and you should strive to whatever you do it well, or at least give it your best effort. And there are many things that I didn't do very well, but effort was required, and that kind of started there. So I think the example of a great family to start, and then going into the military, I always wanted to be a military officer. My dad was sort of an example, and he was only in for World War II, but that was he didn't really talk about it, but I just there was something about him and that always drew me. Got into the military and got in as a pilot, thinking I would go be an airline pilot or something like that, and stayed in. And I stayed in because I love my guys. You get close to them, and you get a mission to do, and you do it together. And flying was fine, but leading or being a part of something that was pointed at something every day, and doing that was awesome. And so that kind of got me going. I was fortunate enough to go to school at Hillsdale, so when I got out, I immediately began thinking about trying to get back here someday, and didn't necessarily, it wasn't the most direct route, but ended up back here, and then got the opportunity to work with young people and work with a great staff and work for a visionary leader in Dr. Harner, the president of the college. And, lucky, blessed, fortunate, all those things. So, yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
I sit and like trying to process all that. So, your dad, my granddad, just in World War II, and I say just because of the time frame, not just that was a huge commitment, huge sacrifice, and the things that they're doing, which was huge. But it's a family business. Like
Yeah.
you see your dad doing that, and you want to go do it. And so, where you had that sort of mentor to develop that patriotic, that God-fearing, here we're going, the older brother mentality, who is almost like a father figure. You're looking to that person to lead you. And then along the way, having those steps, that is a large, and you say blessed, and there's so much to that, right? Because we just have people infusing in all aspects of our life. And I love that. So you've had that. So now here's what I would love for you to do is be able to pay that back to our listeners. Our listeners are going to be younger. They're in their first real leadership position, whether it's a lieutenant captain type or an NCO area, or just in the civilian world where they're just trying to figure out leadership. What nuggets, what leadership principles do you have that you could relay to them that you think would make them benefit, or what you would expect from your young leaders?
Some of it's practical, and some of it's a little out there. I'm a little out there sometimes. First of all, it's easier to lead if you're serving something. If you're leading something or serving something you believe in, or leading something that you believe in, right? So,
Yeah.
so attaching yourself, work for the sake of work is one thing. I always thought there's two reasons people work, and one is because they love what they do, and the other one is because it allows them to do the things that they love. It's either utilitarian or it's a daily passion. I think the daily passion thing's a better way to go about it, right? But the passion might not be in what I found. It wasn't in being a maintenance officer or an operations officer or an alumni director or a chief of staff or whatever it was. It was in the relationships that you had with the people who were about doing the same missions,
Yeah.
about the mission that you're embarked upon, and that you all cared about that mission, that you all understood what that mission was. So I think, first of all, very missional, very, very understanding what it is you're doing and why, and working toward that end. And then the next step, which is a little harder, is being disciplined about that, right? Because there's all sorts of things that are going to tug on you from the outside, shiny objects, right? The stuff that's out there. Oh, well, we could do this, or you're successful at that. Why don't you go do that? Or most of the time, putting myself in less than great situations because of maybe I've been distracted from what the actual mission I was working for, serving, what the mission I was serving was. And you get distracted from that. And you usually get distracted because it gets pretty personal. It starts becoming a little bit more me, and a little less us. So we. So yeah, I think finding a mission that you believe and love, serving that thing, and staying focused on the fact that what you do is about that and not really about you. I think that's sort of a good starting point. Then there's how you decide about it and how you respond to leadership. You know, in the military, we used to talk about followership and all that. Been thinking about this a lot lately because I've been fortunate to work in some pretty good cultures, right? I think culture is more important than leadership, and that's and this is more of a military background, and you can disagree with me, but I in the military you're moving every 2 or 3 years, right? And you move into a command with a bad culture, and you can lead and you can help change that culture, and you can fix it. So leadership does matter. On the other hand, I've been in situations where the culture was so good that mediocre leaders came in and they couldn't wreck it. That the strength of the followership, the strength of and the purpose that the mass had was greater than the damage that one person could do.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not being particularly articulate other than to say that leadership can create great cultures, but cultures can survive less than great leadership. Right. And I think
Gosh.
150 years of a country is an example of that. There's an American idea, there's an American culture, and we've been through a lot, right? And it's not always been great, right? And I'm not going to
Yeah.
editorialize any more than that, but and we're still here, right? The longest history of a free people in history, ever. So that's pretty good, and
Yeah.
that's the strength of American culture. To continue with the mission that the founders of this country put us on, right? And with the idea of what a human being is, and what it means to be free and live in liberty, and all those things. I think that's what will sustain us in the end. But bad leadership, that could wreck it. If you look at the fall of any great empire, that's what's wrecked it,
Yep.
right? Leadership has
Yep.
fallen. Whatever was leading at the top undermined everything else, and it fell apart. So we're not special in that way. We're exceptional, but we're not special. We're not immune to history.
No, and there's so much that you said that I need to unpack here, because I think we talk in leadership, we talk about it all the time. Culture, culture, culture. What is leadership? And what you said, or what I heard you say, I should say, is that culture is more important than leadership, because if you can set a culture, and if you can have and I guess what Simon Sinek says, a just cause, something that we are vital and sold into, you can withstand a bad leader.
Mm-hmm.
Now, over time, if we have multiple bad leaders, they can drive that and really
Yeah.
just eliminate a culture. And I think we've seen those in those great empires. And I'll
Yeah. You
go a little
forget.
bit. Go ahead.
The collective memory goes away, right? You forget what it is you were supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
And that's just like in a smaller organization, an organization like the college. If you look at the history of American colleges, from the 1900s to the
Mm.
2000s to now, or to 1800s to the 1900s to 2000s to now, um, there's been a vast shift in most of those places, right? And they're kind of lost in most cases. Why is that? They've forgotten what they were supposed to be.
So
So
true. So true. And
yeah,
and I'll even take it way back when you're looking at schools. And I always throw out plugs for more classical schools, but for a classical school that you're talking, the whole point of education is what? And it is
yeah.
not to teach the things that we're teaching today. It is to educate people and to just fight for truth and beauty. And
I,
how do we develop people?
I read a great little term. It's education has become about information, and what education really is formation, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
we're forming young minds to be productive human beings and live good lives, right? I mean, you know my wife, who's crazy phonics super freak. Um, she gives me history lessons on what has gone away from teaching. What we used to teach our children 100 years ago that we don't teach them at all. There's just the volume and the rigor and the type of work that they were capable of doing as eighth graders in 1920, and what they can do now.
right.
It's astounding. Your classical schools, or the classical schools that we have anything to do with, going back to those things and those methods, this idea of forming young minds, right, and allowing them to grow and develop and flourish because of that formation. We went from that to trying to manufacture young people, right, and just
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah. And so
Segue.
you use a word that is so true is manufacture people. And so let me ask you the question, because we're doing it in schools
Yeah.
and we're missing the point, right? But I would argue almost we're doing it the same thing in business, where we're
Mhm.
not spending the time to get to know people. We're not getting to know who is to our left and the right. How do we invest in them? So if I want to be a good leader, get away from the manufacturing of what we're trying to do and just get back to the point of, how do I know the people I'm trying to lead? How do I know what's happening in their life? How do I invest in people? And the real thing that I'm driving for is culture building to
Mhm.
that just cause of why I'm working. And you said it earlier and I was like, "Oh, that's great. I love that." Is that I want to get people to see the real value of the organization, and it's not necessarily what we're doing, but who we're doing it with.
Mhm.
And man, life changes then.
I mean, you've been on teams, right? Some of
Oh
the
yeah.
most intense teams of all time. When they're good and when the relationships are strong, they talk about force multiplier. It's a
Mhm.
monstrous force multiplier, right? It's
Yes.
the symbiotic relationship between people toward a common goal or cause, bought in. It's the difference between winning and losing in every endeavor, right?
Gosh,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, yes, and yes. Like that's huge. Okay, I'm gonna pivot because we could talk this all day. I'm all
No
in.
doubt.
This is
No
great.
doubt.
Let me ask you. You have gone through an incredible career. You've done so much, but one of the things that we are always doing is always trying to learn something. So what are you learning now, whether it be work related or personal or life related? What's that thing that you're invested in now?
Romans.
Mm.
I've read the Bible. I've never studied the Bible, and I've been stuck in Romans now for about a year, um, and I'm not getting any smarter. But I think those things, and they talk about my son has a saying about the agents of they. You use the term they when you don't want to particularly define who's talking about what or who's behind something, right? So they did it. But
Yes.
but people talk about stages of life, and you do get more reflective later on than you are because you're too busy. All I really care about now are my kids and my grandkids. And when you get down to it, right?
Yeah.
And so then I think about and then that makes me think what kind of world are they going to live in, and what's going to form them and allow them to be good. And it goes back more and more often to the faith I was raised with as a child that I didn't really consider that much. And so now I think I should maybe consider it more. So that's been going on. And then a good Jack Carr novel now and then, just dizzy.
Absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, good. Well, good. And it's funny because Louis Giglio is going through Romans 8 right now. And when you said that, I was like, "Oh man!" And
that's a tough one. That's a hard chapter right there.
It is a beast, and I've spent a lot of time in Romans because it's one of my favorite books. But and 8's just such a critical part. Maybe the heartbeat. I think Louis said that the heartbeat of the Bible, and so I love it. So it's good. Well, let me do this. We've been going 20 minutes, and I try to make these shorter, but I do want to stop and give it back to you. Is there anything that you would like to depart? Final thoughts for our listeners here today?
First of all, thank you for putting up with me and being a great neighbor. And we're summer neighbors. People should know that. So that's. I can't wear out my welcome that way. But a couple things. We did a big thing with about 120 students at the beginning of the semester. Our dean of men, guy Aaron Peterson, just a dynamic man who wanted to do a talk with students about leading and stuff. And I went over some euphemisms, and one thing I would like to say is, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to put it out there for something and believe in it and make the mistake, because you're going to learn more from that than you are from just sitting on your hands. When in doubt, do something. When in doubt, lead, right? And I guess maybe the last thing is, like I was talking about earlier, with regards to culture, be a because of leader, that the culture is good because you were there and cared about it, and don't be an in spite of leader where the culture was better than you were and survived in spite of you. I think anytime anybody steps into a position of leadership, they should look at the culture and try to make it the best thing that it can be, so that it can sustain in the future when it comes under trial, and it will.
Be a because of, not an in spite of. Man, that's huge. What a great focus. So, all right. Well, Mike, I can't tell you how much I appreciate just having you on the podcast, being able to continually learn from you, and just appreciate you for always investing in me and growing me as a leader and as a person. Man, I appreciate that.
Chris, thank you. And best of luck with Moray. I'd like to talk to you more about that sometime, so you get a chance offline. Give me a yell. That'd be great.
Absolutely. We'll definitely do that. And so for everyone else, obviously going to morayclassical.org, there's my shameless plug for it. We'll put it up and out, and as we go from there. Thanks again for paying attention. And from Mike and I, this is TUC0's Wright checking off.